Jim Wilson.
United States Air Force. Has been stationed out of Cam Ranh Bay, Vietnam.
What is your rank
Rank was sergeant.
and where did you serve?
Primary base was at Pope Air Force Base, North Carolina. Done several tours of TDY over the period of time that I was there. In Kadena, Okinawa, Tachikawa, Japan, all through York Theater, Dominican Republic. Several small places, around the country. I had my draft papers, and I decided the Air Force may be a little better life, so I enlisted in the Air Force. Started technical school, C-130 aircraft maintenance, APG mechanic, and was there for approximately 16 weeks. After that, then I was transferred to Pope Air Force Base in North Carolina, and that was my home base. And then from there, we done, TDY, overseas mostly, and so forth. Well, it was entirely, different situation, from the home life. You kind of had a lot of restrictions at first, and a lot of things you abide by that you probably didn't want to do or wasn't used to doing. But, once you got accustomed to it, it was a good way of life, back then. You had a good job, had a regular paycheck every month, which wasn't a whole lot. I was in a Vietnam conflict. I have to go back and look at the dates, probably in '68, and we, like I said, I was C-130 APG mechanic, and was based out of Cam Ranh Bay, Vietnam. We was flying resupply missions and so forth in country, and so forth like that, which, was, kind of a rough life. The weather was tough there, about 115 degrees in the shade, and, especially your nights, are miserable because you're right there on the Red China Sea, humidity, extremely high, and so forth. But, endured it. And like I say, I probably wouldn't give $1 million to do it again, but I wouldn't take $1 million for the experience that I had, during that time. Mostly when I was in Vietnam, I was a sergeant there, and I was flight line expediter. I was in charge of receiving aircraft a lot of times when it come back in from in-country or so forth, make sure the maintenance got done on hit and so forth. Sometimes I would fly in-country, to get my flying time in, which we had to have so many hours a month in order to draw flight pay. So, I got to fly, quite a bit and so forth. But the biggest thing there, I just received the aircraft, make sure all the maintenance and everything got done on it so the plane would be ready for its next mission. Not so much combat, we shot at a few times going in, making low-level airdrops and stuff, and a lot of the O-130s, would have some, damaged bullet holes and stuff in them, but nothing really so major, on those, because we're pretty much kind of in protected territory a lot of times going into some of the camps and so forth, within the country. But a lot of times you go in, you would get, some rifle fire, stuff like that, small arms fire and so forth. But, we didn't get into the really hot spots, not with a cargo type plane. Yeah, I was there probably about 4 or 5 days, and as we called them back then, Charlie, they threw the mortar in to the base we was at and hit a fuel bladder storage tank, which, had pretty big explosion there. So I guess that's probably about one of the worst things, that I did see, while I was there, and naturally everybody heads for the bunker, when something like that happens. I think probably about the worst New Year's events, we was spent the night in Goose Bay, Labrador, and probably that night, anyway, when we landed, he locked the brakes down, forgot to release them, so next morning, felt like about 40 below zero, and we out there with torches trying to thaw the brakes out to get them to release, and minus, weather. So that's about the worst I think I ever seen, really, in the coldest I'd been. Well, it was kind of debatable, as being drafted or being enlisted, with the war going on, and I just figured the Air Force would be, much cleaner life, and you don't have to worry about so much wading mud, and being shot at, every few minutes and so forth. So I just felt, life expectancy might be a little longer with the casualties that, they was having back then in the Vietnam War. Well, it probably learned me a lot of discipline and respect, for mankind. But, I feel I've done, good over the years, for myself.